This video will show you how to replace the rear brakes, pads, and rotors on a Chrysler Town Country. This will be located behind your rear wheels. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've completed that, remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and we can get the wheel off of here. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our rear brakes. We're going to start disassembling our caliper next. So along the back side here, we're going to start with our 2 caliper slider mounting bolts. We'll use a 13mm for these. Once I get the first one out, I'm going to start it back in just a couple threads. There's that bolt. Let's make our way up to the next piece of hardware. Let's move up to the next piece of hardware here. Now typically, you could remove that first mounting bolt and slide the caliper out of position. On this particular type of application, you're going to find that your emergency brake cable bracket is going to restrict movement, so we're continuing on to the upper mounting bolts for our caliper bracket as well. For this, I'm going to be using an 18mm. Now we can slide that bracket out of position. We'll fully remove the lower slider pin bolt once again, and then we can slide the caliper out of position. Now that I have that dislodged, the next thing we have to do is look at our caliper piston and the protective rubber boot. If you see any fluid making its way out of this area, you're going to have to replace your caliper. This looks good, so for now I'm going to temporarily set it aside. Now let's continue on to removing our 2 brake pads. We'll slide those out of position, just a quick inspection. Now we can make our way down to the lower caliper bracket mounting bolt, just like the upper, using 18mm, but keep in mind this is the last thing holding this in place. Let's go ahead and remove that caliper bracket. We'll set it aside. Now we can remove that brake rotor. There it is, friend. Go ahead and set that aside for disposal. Now, prior to any installation, of course, we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting surface. For this, we're cleaning our bearing hub. This is where the brand new brake rotor will sit against. If you do not clean it, you may find you have a brake pulsation. You can use a wire brush or even a light sanding disc. After you've cleaned this well enough, we'll continue on with some anti-seize. Now let's prepare to install our brand new rear brake rotor. The first thing we have to do is clean our braking surfaces. We'll use some parts cleaner, a nice clean rag, and a quick wipe all the way around. Same thing for the other side on that braking surface. Just go ahead and wipe it down. Remove any miscellaneous oils or debris. Let's go ahead and get that in place. We're sliding it onto the wheel bearing as far as possible. I like to hold it in place with one of my original lug nuts. Just go ahead and bottom it out. Now let's focus on the caliper bracket. We need to remove everything from it so we can clean it and lubricate. Now, if you were looking at the caliper bracket, you're going to find that you have 4 caliper bracket tins. You can remove all 4 of those. Just go ahead and give them a quick inspection. We are not reusing them. You can set them aside for disposal. Now, after removing all 4 of those, we're continuing on to our slider pins. The slider pins also have caliper slider pin boots that also need to be removed. For those, we're taking hold of the slider pin. You can also remove the boot from the bracket at the same time. Now, at this point, what I would do is remove the boot from the caliper slider pin, fully clean it, and inspect it. Now, as far as that slider pin boot, the next thing we have to do is clean it. So I'm using a clean rag with no detergents. I don't want to cause any damage. Once I slide it through that caliper slider pin boot, I'm just rolling it around. What I'm doing here is attempting to remove any miscellaneous grease or debris from inside of that boot. Once you've done that, a thorough inspection, make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged. Go ahead and set that aside. We'll focus on the caliper slider pin next. As far as that's concerned, clean the entire smooth shafted area, all the way down to the groove. After giving this a close inspection, we can set that aside as well. Repeat the process for the other side of the caliper bracket. That looks good. Now we'll continue on focusing on just the bracket with everything removed. We need to make sure we clean all of the mounting points. We're going to start with the areas that had the caliper bracket tins. For this, you can use a wire brush or continue on with a sanding disc. Now it's important to make sure that you remove any miscellaneous debris or raised areas from each of the 4 areas on the caliper bracket. Now for each of these ports, as I mentioned, just a little bit of parts cleaner and a bore brush. A quick rinse. And now just a close inspection. Confirm that you removed any debris from inside and along the outer edge here where the caliper slider pin boot would sit. Repeat the process for the other side of the bracket. We'll let this dry and we'll continue on. Now we're going to start with our caliper bracket tins. Before we install those, we'll add some high temperature lubricant to each of the 4 areas on the caliper bracket where we removed the tins from originally. This is going to help with vibration dampening and noise reduction. You don't need very much. Let's continue on with those tins. Now, if you were to look at them, you want to make sure you're paying attention. You're going to find that one area on each one of the tins protrudes out to one side or the other. We want to make sure that we have the area that protrudes out, facing out and away from the center of the bracket where the rotor would be. Otherwise, you're going to hear an odd squealing or even a grinding. Aside from that, looking at the tin from the side, you can see that one area kind of protrudes out a little further than the top area. That would be the bottom. So we're just lining this up with the caliper bracket and we're rolling it into the locked position. Once you feel as though you have it in position, attempt to pull it out. It should not easily slide out of position. We'll continue on to all others. Perfect. Now it's time for the slider pins and their corresponding boots. Now, as far as these ports, we're going to go inside with our high temperature lubricant and also along the outer edge where the boot would sit. After applying a thin amount of lubricant there, we'll continue on with our slider pin boot. Just go ahead and slide that right onto the bracket. Give it a quick spin, a light tug, confirming it is secured on the bracket. We'll continue on with the slider pin next. High temperature lubricant along the entire smooth shafted area of the slider pin all the way down to the tip and all the way up into the groove closest to where my fingers are. This is where the boot would sit. Let's slide this into position. Squeeze out any air from inside of the slider pin boot and go ahead and give it a quick spin here. Repeat the process for the other side of the bracket. One last quick inspection of that bracket. This looks perfect. Let's get it over to the vehicle. Over at the vehicle, before we get the caliper bracket in place, let's have a quick look at the caliper itself. Our main focus is on the caliper piston that we can see inside this area. We have to actually twist this to push it in. Looking at the caliper piston, you can see that we have 2 small divots for our tool to fit into. Now here's our caliper compression tool. We have the 2 tabs for those divots. We'll go ahead and start pushing this in. So when we line up our tool, we're paying attention to the piston, making its way in. We can see right along this area. We'll start turning this piston clockwise, driving it in. There, feels like it's bottomed out. We can remove our tool. Once you have that fully pushed back, the next thing we need to focus on once again is just double checking to make sure there's no fluid coming out of this area. Now this does look good, so let's continue on with some high temperature lubricant. As far as that lubricant, we're going along the solid portion of the piston here, and then also along the back side of each of the two ears on the caliper, essentially just on the areas that touch up against the brake pads. The next thing we want to do is make sure we clean our mounting bolts for the caliper bracket. We're going to get this in position. Continuing on, we'll start in both pieces of hardware here. Keep in mind we will have to remove the upper piece of hardware for the installation of the caliper portion, but I like to have both pieces in while I continue on with my two brake pads. So with that said, let's snug the lower piece of hardware. Now it's time for installation of our brake pads. You're going to find in the kit, two of your brake pads came with wear indicators. One will be on one side, the other pad will have it on the opposite. We want to make sure we have the proper pad for the side we're working on. During the installation, the pad with the wear indicator is going to be on the inboard side, and we want to have that indicator on the upper portion. So while we're driving down the road, if the rotor was to hit against this and break it, it's going to push it out and away and not draw it into the brakes. So for the installation of these pads, once you know which one goes where, we'll just go ahead and start rolling them into position. Now when you do get it in position, attempt to give it a wiggle. If you find that you have to hammer it in for some reason or it does not move, you did not clean the caliper bracket well enough and you're going to find you have a braking problem. Time for the outer pad. The outer pad does not have a wear indicator. Both pads move freely. This is exactly what we need to see. Before we get our caliper in place, we can remove our upper caliper bracket bolt. At this point, the caliper bracket should not move around. We've already snugged the lower piece of hardware. Let's get our caliper in place. We're carefully sliding it over our brake pads and our slider pins. Start in our lower piece of hardware. We'll make our way up to the upper hardware next. Let's get the upper slider pin bolt in as well. Now that I have both pieces started in, we'll continue on to our upper caliper bracket mounting bolts. Now during the removal process, you remember that we also had to dislodge this bracket, so we need to make sure it's properly aligned. Now we have all pieces of hardware started in. Let's go ahead and snug them up and torque them to manufacturer's specification. We'll bottom out both of our caliper bracket bolts and torque those to 74 foot-pounds. There's that one. Let's do the same for the other. Now that we have the upper bolt done, same torque for the lower hardware, 74 foot-pounds. After torquing both of those, let's continue on to our slider pin bolts. For these, we're going to bottom them out, and then I'm going to torque them to 26 foot-pounds. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can prepare to reinstall our wheel. The first thing we'll do is remove our lug nut that we had pre-installed holding that rotor in place. Once you have the wheel in place, continue on to all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We're going to bottom them out. We'll get the wheels safely back on the ground and torque each of them to 100 foot-pounds. Now that I have the wheel back on the ground, we can go ahead and torque those lug nuts to that 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we showed you how to replace the brakes on one side of the vehicle. The process for one side is the exact same thing as the other. Now once you've completed both sides, make your way into the passenger compartment. Pump up the brake pedal till it feels firm and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.